Pre-trib means it's talking about the pre-tribulation rapture. Some people believe that a pre-tribulation, mid-trib, or post-trib, and so that's what that's about. It's about the rapture. Sorry, guys. I figured I'd go live now because get a little bit of time in. I'm going to definitely try to go live tomorrow. Like I said, Mondays and Thursdays, but I did have something pop up to where tomorrow evening may be an issue. I got something I got to handle tomorrow, so I don't know if I'll be in. I don't know if I'll be back in enough time tomorrow to be able to pick that up or not. So I figured I'd go live now, so individuals could. I'd be able to get that information out because I don't know if I'll be able to go live tomorrow evening or not. Do me a favor, guys, hit that heart button and share. Let's get me pushed out in the algorithm. Maybe we can have some good conversations. What's up, YB? What's up, man?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Doing good, brother. Doing good.
That's good. I just wanted to ask, I'm somebody who would probably disagree with the majority of things you believe in, and I'm not here for a debate. I'm more so just kind of curious because you seem like a pretty cool guy. What are some ways that people, regardless of where they stand on things, can help promote unity and peace and kindness in public and everyday life between people who would probably be on the other side of the fence of things?
It's a great question. I would say just have the ability to disagree with each other and not it. It doesn't mean that much. If you're an evolutionist or an atheist, I'm going to share Christ with you, but and you're going to say I don't agree or I don't believe, and then that'll be fine with me. We'll shake hands and live our lives. I'm not going to hate on you for it.
I guess I should have specified what are some things that people can do, or that you think people should do that are outside of talking about that stuff. Let's say you're just out and you're just interacting with a stranger and you're not going to bring that kind of stuff up. Without bringing stuff up like that, what's a way you can go about promoting some kind of peace between one another?
Respect other people and their viewpoints, man. That's what it basically boils down to.
Great. Yeah.
Don't step on my rights, and I won't step on yours.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's awesome that people can coexist in that way. I just went to last year. I went to the Pride Festival in NYC, and I went with a couple people who weren't totally along with that kind of stuff. But we went for my friends, and it was just kind of like a disagree in peace kind of thing, and I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And that's it. People should be able to tell people that they disagree without them getting offended.
Totally.
I'm not going to get offended if you come up here and tell me that you don't believe in my lifestyle or my choices are terrible or whatever.
Yeah, as long as
I'm not going to get offended by it. Yeah, I'm going to go with your opinion on it and say you're allowed to have that opinion as long as you don't physically do anything to me to try to prevent me from having it. You're allowed to have your position.
Yeah, for sure. Got to keep the free speech up. And Crazy 8, you're right. Pride Fest is very fun. It was a fantastic time. But yeah, I just wanted to stop by and say that, man. I hope you have a good rest of your stream.
Yeah, man, you too. Appreciate it.
Yep. Cheers.
Yeah. You say so a drag show for what it's worth. Yeah, like I said, for those individuals coming in, sorry that I'm doing a last minute live here. But like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go live tomorrow or not. Just depends on what time I get back, and it might be a little bit later. So, brother, you better go to bed. Yeah, see, that's one of the guys telling me that what I have to do tomorrow is telling me I better get some sleep because it's going to be a long day tomorrow. Yeah, but don't tell me what to do. You're not my boss on TikTok. You're my boss outside of TikTok. What's up, Fax?
Hey, thanks for having me up.
Yes, sir.
I do have an issue with the flood, especially the story of Noah's Ark and the flood. When you start getting into the actual science of it, it makes it quite literally impossible for it to work. For a multitude of different reasons, but even one of the most telling would be if you just take any dimensions of the ark that are accepted by any biblical philosophers and you leave only one portal open, which is what is stated in the Bible, the amount of animals, even the minimum amount of animals that are reported by any biblical scholars, would still overwhelm that ventilation to the point that every single living organism would die. And it's
Okay, it
just
talks
simple.
about one window, but that's not the same as ventilation. Like you can have a piece of plank go like this, a space, and then another piece of plank go like this, with it being ventilated right here that would allow fresh air in and out, no problem, but it still wouldn't count as a window because you can't see anything out of it. So
Yeah,
it
but
can
the
have
problem
one
is-
window, but that's not the same as ventilation.
The problem is, though, you would have to rely on below the water decks to house a vast portion of the animals, which means that no ventilation, there is no powered ventilation, which means passive ones like you're talking about wouldn't work. You
It
would
would if you
quite
had
literally have every animal unalive due to their own waste gases.
Not if you had a moon pool, you wouldn't. This is one of the things that many creationists state was in the ark. Don't know if there was or not, and again, we don't know how big. Some people actually state that the window itself could open and close, but it wasn't. It was a window that went around. Don't know if that's true or not, but even if you had a moon pool, this would allow pumping to happen. So every time you hit a wave, then the water would rise within the pool, and then it would decrease as you went over it. So this would literally cause air to get pumped in and out of the ark. So wouldn't be a problem at all, actually.
And I've heard of those before, but also you have to look at scalability. And scalability, it wouldn't. There's no evidence of any of those wind poles ever being found that would be of the scale needed to keep the ark ventilated enough. But even stuff like heat exchange in the earth, the amount of heat exchange it would require for that amount of water vapor to condense into water would...
What do you mean? What water vapor would need to condense into water? I'm kind of lost. What do you mean?
So if it's raining, if you need all the water vapor necessary to create all the rain that would be necessary to flood the earth.
You think you think the earth flooded because of the rain?
I think that would be the only way it could.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
so
there would be massive evidence of geologic showing massive amounts of water being pushed through the surface of the earth, which there isn't.
Sure there is. It's literally the cracks all over the planet. That's what the creation model shows. You can say I don't believe it, but you can't say that it's not there, because it is. And one of the ways that they show reversals are around this, because it pushed so violently out of the ground that the rocks that were solidified in poles, meaning that they face the north and south pole, got pushed in changing all kinds of different directions. So when you see these cracks in some different places, you see literally, trillions of rocks that have these different pole shapes, because as the water shot up, it broke them out and laid them out in different areas. And secondly, it says that the water continued to rise for over 150 days. That'd be a problem if it only rained for 40 days and for 40 nights. So clearly the water did not come from the rain. The majority of it come from the fountains of the deep.
And unfortunately, every geologist in the world would disagree with that. And
Unfortunately,
I'm not
that would be
ju-
an argument from authority, and I don't care about a logical fallacy. I care about what the science says, not what people agree or disagree with.
Well, it's only a logical fallacy if you're relying on the authority being an authority, not if you're relying on the authority being correct. So
No, no, that's not how a logical
Otherwise-
fallacy works. If you just agree with them, it doesn't make it true or not. The logical fallacy of it being from a majority is when it's okay to cite a paper, but if you're saying that a lot of people agree with me, that's a logical fallacy. Just to state that a lot of people believe this, so therefore it makes it true, is a logical fallacy, and that's what you just did, brother.
Is it
If you
all-
want to
I'm
bring
not
a
saying
specific
that a lot of
scientist,
people. I'm not saying that a lot of people that believe this. I'm saying a lot of people that study
You just
this,
did,
that
man.
test it, that actually
Come on,
run
man. The way
rigorous
I
scientific
don't want to
testing
argue
on these
about
concepts.
arguing, but you did. You literally just said every geologist in the world disagrees with you. I don't think you've polled every geologist. So I mean, I don't want to argue about arguing, but you literally just did a logical fallacy. Let's just go ahead and get off of that. So and not try to save it because it looks kind of silly when it really is a logical
what I will
fallacy. Every
say
geologist
is-
in the world doesn't agree with you. That's just ridiculous.
Fine, I'll
just to
retract
even
that.
imply that.
I'll
Thank you.
retract that. What I will say is, though, geologists, the massive consensus of the field of study that studies these things, disagrees with you.
Sure. Can you bring some evidence instead of just saying that people disagree with me?
What evidence would you need? Like specifically
so-
a paper that says that they disagree
That-
with the ARC story?
No. Well, I mean, I can imagine they disagree with me, but just saying they disagree with me, why? What? So, like, for example, no disrespect, but the things that you've brought up so far, you said could not happen, and so far it hasn't been scientifically disproven, I think. I'll let the audience decide, but I don't think you brought anything that could not be scientifically proven. So when you look at when you say geologist, when they look at these different columns, they think of uniformitarianism, meaning that these layers form slowly. Okay, but we can actually do testable and observable science. This happens in called hydrologic sorting, right? And if you're going to say that these layers are millions of years old, then you're going to have to explain things to me like the 250 million year old bacteria that they brought back to life is called the Lazarus experiment, where they went to this layer that was identified in the geologic column that was supposed to be 250 million years old. It was like 1,000 feet or something like that down. They went down. They brought up salt crystals that had formed around the organic soup, if you will, that they had. They were able to extract that and put it in a petri dish and revive the bacteria. So now you're going to have to explain if the geologist model is true, and this truly is 250 million years old, you're going to have to explain why the DNA inside of it didn't degrade, which is against the genetic models that we have, the degradation models. Of 200, and these bacteria lived before the dinosaurs, and you're telling me that we have their DNA and they were able to be revived? You're going to have to explain that to me. The flood
One, I
model
would
says
have
that
to
they're
actually
4,400
review it
years
because
old.
I haven't heard anything like that. But my assumption would be, just from what you've said, is that the typical degradation model that you're speaking of probably wasn't like thought of in the terms of bacteria being encased in crystalline structures that would probably do a great deal to arrest that degradation. So that would be like if you had a model that like showed how meat spoils in a room temperature room, but you kept the meat in a temperature of negative 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you came back 500 years later and were like, oh, look, this meat isn't spoiled. You must be crazy if you think it's been 500 years, because obviously the meat degradation theory shows that it would spoil in 2 days.
So that is a reasonable assumption that you've made. Unfortunately, we have the degradation rates inside of these objects, like for example, the dinosaurs. They're finding DNA fragments in the dinosaur bones, and he left. Yeah. So, sorry, man. Your science didn't prove me wrong. It proved me right, actually. So I'll just go ahead and land that plane since I was talking on it. We found the DNA inside the dinosaur bones, and clearly they even admit in the papers that they do not have the degradation models to get it out to 65 million years old. So if they don't have the degradation models to get it out to 65 million years old, I think it's a reasonable assumption to assume that they don't have the degradation models to get it out to 250 million years old, which is before the dinosaurs. So said all of that to say this. Those layers are not millions of years old. They were made in the flood of Noah. And I think that that's reasonably assumed and proven through the flood model. So the Bible's right.
William, I got a good one to tell you.
What's up, brother man?
My little niece had been going to Bible school with some neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Because she come in last night saying, "Oh, I want you to sign me up for to go to church."
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, and we told her, no, you don't have to be signed up to go to church.
Yeah, you just go.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
I thought,
lead wouldn't exist in the young Earth model. Come on, brother. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why lead wouldn't exist. That doesn't even make any sense.
that was
I
just
take it that you're a. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Alan. Go ahead.
uh, that was just so cute, and her doing that.
Amen, brother. Hey, to God be all the glory for getting her into church. Every bit
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, brother. When you say lead wouldn't exist in a young Earth model, I assume that you believe that all of the uranium decays into lead, and that every bit of lead that we have decayed from uranium. I think that would be your assumption, but you couldn't. I don't know how you would prove that. I don't know how you'd prove that some lead wasn't created and all of the lead that we have decayed from uranium. I don't. Even if you don't go with the creator, you mean to tell me that when the supernova happened, none of it all created uranium and none of it created lead? That doesn't make any sense by any model. That I don't even know if evolutionists believe that. I don't know if that's right or not. What evidence of a global flood? Geologic column, polystratofossils, hydrologic sorting. I would say dinosaur bone beds, soft tissue in dinosaur bones, and DNA fragments. DNA fragments being found in dinosaurs. I think that's more than enough evidence to prove a global worldwide flood. Midnight, what's up, brother?
Yo, 37. So how can we discredit something when you have like cross confirmation between all these different fields? Like we have simpler organisms and lower levels of rock, and then it gets more complex the higher the level of the rock you go. So then you have a cross confirmation between the geological record and a like anatomical record. And then you also have cross confirmation between those two disciplines and retroviral DNA, which gets passed, through organisms and follows the
Sure.
evolutionary tree the same way.
All right, let's do one of those at a time since we named two things. One, the flood prediction would make that same prediction that you said evolutionists do. So the way that it's found is you found bacteria, then you have the Cambrian explosion, and then you go fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal, and birds. Right? So we would make that same prediction because that's where they live. You're going to find the Cambrian explosion, like the crabs and the shellfish and things like this. You're going to find them at the bottom because when you have a flood, that's where they live. So clearly when things are buried, they're going to be at the bottom because they're already there. The fish are going to be in the next layer because they live in the next layer that's higher than that. Even today, that's where they live. Amphibians, clearly, because they're right on the edge of the water and the land. And then reptiles and mammals are going to be found above that because they're on the land. And then birds are going to be found at the top because that's where they live. So our model fits that also. So it wouldn't say that it only fits the evolutionary model. That also fits the flood model. And when you say things like, you said ERVs, you talk about endogenous retroviruses?
Yeah. Well, retroviral DNA.
Okay. Are you familiar with the, I think it's called the Phoenix experiment?
I might be, but not the name.
Yeah, so what happens is they took what they believed to be a retroviral sequence, and then they degraded it, cut what they believed to be the mutations away from it, and then it became viral, again, according to them. So, but unfortunately for them, this proves our theory that when you look at these sequences, you're interpreting that they used to be endogenous retroviruses, and then they came into humans and became functional. But what our model shows is that that they're functional parts of our DNA. They're part of making placenta. We can't live without them. And they're part of our immune system, which is mainly why they look like retroviruses, because they literally fight retroviruses. That's part of their job to do.
I think
So
what I'm talking about.
hold on, let me just land it.
markers. Okay.
Okay, let me just land this for everybody too, and then I'll let you speak, I promise. So creation model says that they actually started off in our genome, and then through degradation, they became viruses, not the other way around, not viruses, and then they became genome. So when this experiment that I told you, when I showed you that, it's exactly what they did. They took part of our genome, degraded it, and then made it viral, which proves that that's the way that it probably happened, not the other way around. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that might be something adjacent. What I'm talking about is retroviral DNA that basically left markers on the DNA of different organisms. And what happened is if it gets introduced to an organism, it stays on that particular part of the maybe the genome or the DNA.
Yeah, so am I. It has to go into the germ cell to be
as it
affected.
evolves. Yeah, even if like that, even if there were like a split or something, the DNA stays on that. It has that same marker. But before it's introduced, if there was an evolutionary split, say there's some kind of evolutionary split, right? Become two species, and then the DNA attaches to one of them. Well, now you're not going to see it on the other one because it split before the DNA was introduced to that organism. By looking at these markers, you can then kind of get an idea of like how would the evolutionary tree branch out if you mapped it based on where these markers are, and that overlaps 100% with the geological record and the I keep saying anatomical record. That's not what I mean.
I know what you meant. Yeah,
like phylogetical.
I know what you meant.
Yeah,
but that's exactly what I explained. That we're talking about the exact same thing. So you're looking at these markers, and you're saying that they have to have a universal common ancestor because the mathematical improbability that a retrovirus infected these two organisms separately and then became part of their genomes in the both identical same way would be astronomically large. Okay, so our model says that they didn't start off as retroviruses, that they started out as part of the genome, the created genome, and then became retroviruses, and that's what you see today. And like I said, I used the Phoenix experiment. That's exactly what they did. They took the sequences that we have that they believed used to be retroviruses, and then they cut off, if you will, the what they believed to be the mutations. Right, because things mutate like ever so often. So they cut off the parts that they believe were mutations, and then got it to be a retrovirus. So when they see that theory, when they see that evidence, it confirms what they believe, that it was a retrovirus, then it mutated. We cut the mutations off, made it a retrovirus again. But it fits our model because we believe that it was part of the genome, the created genome, and through degradation, which is not evolution. Evolution could not be degradation because that's a loss of information, not gain. But through degradation, then it became a virus. So it actually fits our model, I think, a little bit better than it does y'all's model because we believe that it was here first.
Okay, if it was there first, wouldn't it be across all species? Since it's not being introduced anymore, it's already there.
Well, no, it depends on what it does. Like there's different retroviral. Even though I don't believe they're retroviruses, that's what they call them, so that's what their name is. They have different purposes in the body. Like for example, making placenta. So you wouldn't expect this to be in an animal that doesn't make placenta. And that's exactly what we see. We don't see a retrovirus that now become part of our genetic information. The evolution would say the exact opposite. If this just went around and it was a virus infecting different animals, it should infect different animals in different ways. So it became part of our genome, according to y'all, but it's part of making our placenta. So you got a chicken and egg problem because you need the mammal. You need the mammal to create the retrovirus because the retrovirus cannot duplicate unless it's inside of a host, right? So, but then the host can't have any children or even come into existence without the placenta if we're talking about a mammal. And the retrovirus makes the placenta. It helps make the placenta. So literally, if you cut this sequence out, you wouldn't be able to give birth to any live offspring anymore. Everything would unalive, and that would be the extinction event for that animal or for that line.
I mean, just
so you got a chicken and egg problem.
It's the same thing as saying, "Oh, there is no problem," because we know chickens and eggs exist. But anyways, going back to
that's the chicken and egg reference is to which came first. That's the reference. Which came first, the chicken or the egg to have the chicken? That's a pretty well known thing. I'm saying the problem that you have is which came first, the mammal. Did the mammal come first, then to be able to house the endogenous retrovirus, or did the endogenous retrovirus come first to be able to create the mammal? Because without the endogenous retrovirus, then you can't have it being part of the placenta. So the mammals need it to be able to exist, and the retrovirus needs them in an effort to be able to become part of their genome.
All right. So going back to the example, though, if you have the speciation and you have the marker following perfectly along a line, and it just doesn't show up and where there was the separation. And how does your model account for that?
I literally just answered that. I'll say it again.
You said it's on the genome, but if it's on the genome
so we believe
beforehand, before the speciation, it would show up on both.
It was
species.
created as part of a useful genetic information. It was created that way. The reason why we have them in apes and in humans that are in the identical same way is because they do identically the same thing. It's the same code writer writing the code. So you're taking by faith that this used to be a virus, but like I've said, I've given the paper. I can give it to you again if you'd like, but it's called the Phoenix experiment, where they took what they believed an endogenous retrovirus was, degraded it, and made it into a retrovirus. Right? So this shows that they took perfectly good genetic information, degraded it, and then it became viral. So it fits our model, showing that we believe that this was part of the genetic sequence to begin with, and then it became viral. So when you guys see it as a viral thing, you say, okay, well, it's in the exact same sequences, so therefore it must have infected them, and it proves universal common ancestor. But if that's a little bit hard to follow, I got another one. So the endogenous retrovirus goes like this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we've already stated this, so I'm not. The endogenous retrovirus infected the humans, or infected the apes, and it shows that we have a universal common ancestor because we have the same markers in the exact same place. And if we didn't, the chances of the endogenous retrovirus infecting apes and humans separately, then becoming part of the genetic information separately in the exact same identical spots, is astronomically too large to happen. So if you grant, I could still go with that. I could still argue that the endogenous retrovirus infected humans and apes separately and became part of our genome separately in the exact same way in the exact same mechanisms. And the reason why I can argue that, and that you would have to accept it, is because I take it you're an evolutionist. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you believe in abiogenesis without a creator. And abiogenesis on its own is astronomically larger than endogenous retroviruses infecting humans and apes in the exact same way or the exact same spot. So it's more likely that the endogenous retroviruses that I believe, if they infected humans and apes separately, is still more plausible than your theory of abiogenesis without God. So I still win, because even if you want to grant that, you can't go from a mathematical improbability argument, because I'll win that.
Evolution doesn't disprove God. That's not what evolution's about.
Well, that's fine. If you want to say a deity did it through abiogenesis, I'll win that too, because then I can just claim that a deity is the one that caused the retrovirus to infect humans and apes separately. So it's actually a dilemma that you guys have as far as evolution's concerned, and endogenous retroviruses. If you want to say deity did abiogenesis, then I can claim deity on endogenous retroviruses. Even though I've already answered it perfectly, I just want to show you this dilemma. Even though I've showed you that I believe it was clearly part of the genome and I've supported that, it doesn't matter. Even if I don't want to go with that argument, I'll go with this argument. You cannot go with the improbability argument, because the abiogenesis without a deity is so much larger, so much more improbable, that you have to concede with my argument. Secondly, if you don't want to go with if you want to go with the deity and say, well, that God could have created abiogenesis, then you also have to then grant that God could do the endogenous retroviruses. So
that's fine. If it's part of the genome, why is it? How do we explaining how it's being introduced in these different ways? If it's part of the genome, if it's part of the genome, it tells me it's like some underlying thing that's going to be an undercurrent through speciation, where you're going to see it across these different species, not being introduced in different spots and then perfectly tracking down these lineages.
So you don't, though. Where do you see that? Where do you see it being introduced? What you're doing is you're looking at known genetic sequences, and you're inferring that long ago and far away this used to be a virus. You don't see it going into it.
Because you don't. You don't watch it go into it, but you see, like, okay, there's speciation where these branch off. You don't see the markers here, and we do see the markers here. So you have a spot where there was no marker, and then you have a spot where there is a marker. So that would be introduced there.
Right, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Try to follow again. Let me try to do it again, okay? So you're looking at these exact same markers and you're saying that it's improbable that they were infected separately and became part of the genome in the exact same sequences. So therefore, it's more probable that they infected one universal common ancestor long ago and far away, and then were part of that universal common ancestor. And the reason why we got the exact same sequences is because we share that genetic line. I wanted to still man your argument. Am I correct in what you believe so far?
I mean, that would explain why it continues down one line. That doesn't explain why it didn't branch off, though.
I know. I'm gonna help you out with that. I just want to make sure that I'm still manning you correctly. I don't want to misrepresent you. So if that's correct, like I've just still manned it, not straw manned it, but still manned it, then now hear me out. We're saying as creationists that it was originally created that way. In other words, God gave it to the apes and he gave it to the humans. They're not endogenous retroviruses. You guys have just named that sequence that looks like that. You've named it that. Because what we have seen nowadays, when we look at it, we go, this looks like an endogenous retrovirus. It looks like that because it started off as the genome that God created, and then it went into endogenous retroviruses. And again, we have testable, observable science that shows this. You guys don't know where endogenous retroviruses started. You have no clue. You have no clue. How did the virus get here? Where did it come from? How does it fit into our genome? Well, evolutionists have no answer for that. They don't know where it started from or where it came from. Creationists, we believe that it was our genome. I know. There's different kinds, but it still shows that that most endogenous we have an endogenous retrovirus right now that's going into the koala bear population. We see this, right? I don't know if they know exactly where that endogenous retrovirus started at or not, but I would make a prediction right now. Could be wrong. It wouldn't prove right one way or another, but I would probably make a prediction right now that endogenous retrovirus started off in something else's genome, whether it be koala bear or whatever. It started off as a genome and then degraded and became a retrovirus. And we know that the retrovirus that's going into the koala bear population, another argument, is that it's deleterious. It's degrading the koala bear population. It is a problem for them. So, and most mutations in viruses clearly are. So you guys have a pretty big hurdle to jump because, again, we have testable and observable science that shows us that this fits along with it being original to the genome sequence. Again, because we've taken that genome sequence and turned it into a retrovirus, showing that that's clearly how it could have come about with to begin with. That's testable and observable science. Secondly, you're going to have to explain that if it come in your way, you're going to have to explain where it come from, which we don't know. And secondly, how it become part of our genome and beneficial when we don't test and observe that. What we see in endogenous retroviruses today is deleterious.
Wouldn't you equate that to environmental stress?
You could argue that, but you got to give me something that again. Now we're arguing just long ago and far away.
Well, I live in Australia,
fairy tale.
so like I live here. I mean, the country in itself is very hostile.
Yeah.
How things work is through environmental stress.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I don't have no problem with that, but you're still going to have to show me that the environment. And again, now we're assuming again this is a fairy tale that the environmental stress caused it to become beneficial. Okay. Can you give me one example of that that's testable and observable and not inferred?
I don't think it has to be beneficial. It could just be not
detrimental to the animal's well-being.
Yeah.
Well, it did become part of it. Became beneficial, so I need to see that.
And what's the record of complexity? Is that the taxonomical record or the phylogenetic? I don't know which one that is, where you're just looking at complexity. That record maps onto the retroviral record and onto the geological record. All three cross-confirm each other. So why would that?
Well, I've already showed you how that done the creation model too, brother.
What if like birds and fish and different things all being mixed up in water? Why would they?
Well, they are
sometimes. They have different densities. Why would they fall into different layers of sediment? That made no sense.
Right. Well, you're making an assumption that it's the same everywhere. That's not true. I went earlier because I would say that there's an average of the geologic stratification, if you will, with the animals being put out would be Cretaceous, the Crustaceous, meaning that the Cambrian explosion, then fish, then amphibia, and then reptile, mammal, and birds. Right. for the average, that's the way that they would probably be laid out. I don't have any problem conceding that. But if you're going to think that it's all the time like that, that's incorrect. We have many different fossil places where we see that a lot of these things are mixed together. And we know for a fact that there's been regular modern birds found amongst the dinosaur population. This is why Archaeopteryx got demoted from the missing link. Because if you notice, they used to say that Archaeopteryx was the missing link, that it's part, it's half or half reptile, half bird. Unfortunately for them, they found birds below that layer. So they found regular birds below that. So that means if the birds were below that layer, then Archaeopteryx could not have been a missing link because the regular birds, according to y'all's model, predated it.
Okay.
So
we would agree that
we know
if
that
evolution was true, we would see layers of complexity that are in lower to higher levels of rock, and the retroviral DNA mapping onto that one-to-one by matching the branching patterns and being markers in the DNA, that would all be evidence of evolution, correct?
What? All right, so I understood yours. Can you still mend my argument? Because I still mend your argument, and I made it. I was correct.
God put the markers on people in their genome, and that we're retroactively going back and saying, "Oh no, that was actually viruses causing that."
So it wasn't viruses causing that; it was the genome that became viruses. All right, now still mend the geologic column thing about how we found the life, because I understand your model, but my model fits also.
Fish live low in the ocean and birds live high up in the air. Therefore, when there was a flood and everything died, they landed in their general locations.
There you go. So how does your model fit and mine doesn't?
I mean, one is invoking an outside force, a creator god, and one isn't. You're adding an assumption, and it's also the biggest assumption possible to make.
Okay, so we said assumption. So far, no disrespect, I concede your model is a well thought out design model. That if evolution was true, you'd find these things for the most part, not everywhere. Again, I've already showed you that it's not everywhere, but on an average, you'd find these things in this layering, this layering sequence. Okay, I can concede that. I think that's a well thought out explanation of evolution. But what evidence are you showing to support that theory? Okay, you showed me where they're at. Okay, we talked about endogenous retroviruses. I said if they are created, and then I gave the evidence for it. So far, I'm the only one that's actually brought the evidence, which was I showed you. I told you about the papers. I can't show you because if I flip my camera around, TikTok stops me for some reason and bans my channel. I used to show the Mary Schweitzer thing on here, but I can't do that anymore. But anyway, I can give you the references, like I said, which would be the Phoenix paper where they took an endogenous retrovirus or a sequence of the genome and turned it into an endogenous retrovirus, which I believe supports my claim. So I'm not bringing out God for that argument.
They took a sequence of a genome that was not an endogenous retrovirus and turned it into one, you said?
No. They took what they believed used to be an endogenous retrovirus. So they went to the sequences that look like it. I don't think you could take a sequence that clearly wouldn't look like an endogenous retrovirus, obviously. So you take that specific genome and then you degrade it. You cut off what you believe to be mutations, and then you turn it into an endogenous retrovirus. So what we do is we test and observe degradation. That's clearly throughout evolution. We test and observe degradation.
Do any of the scientists in that paper interpret that as them not turning a genome into an endogenous retrovirus, but actually just turning primordial endogenous retrovirus into an endogenous retrovirus? Sorry.
No, probably not. Most of them go against what their viewpoints even show. So even if they have degradation, they still go with evolution. That's a problem. I can show you even Mary Schweitzer goes against her own scientific findings. So what they believe or how they interpret it is important. Don't get me wrong. I think that their opinion should be considered, but I go with the evidence, right? So I think this evidence clearly fits my model. Now, could you say, could it fit our model? Yes, but I think it fits my model better.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the conversation. I got to go take care of the boys.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, I've had a great conversation with you, man. I'd like to share Christ with you. That's why I do this. So what do you know about him?
I'm open-minded. I'm agnostic. But yeah, I'll follow you. I'll maybe see you in another life.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. If you got any questions about Christ explicitly, let me know, man. I'd like to share him with you, okay?
All right. Peace.
Yeah, man. Peace.
Yeah, I'm just catching up. I can I ask, just based on that conversation, do you believe that there is evolution, but that a deity gapped to the abiogenesis piece, or that there's no evolution and that all sort of living life has always been here?
No, yeah, I was using that to show that even if I don't go with that regular endogenous retrovirus argument that I go with, I can go to you guys have a dilemma, and that's what I was showing about that. I do not believe in abiogenesis. I do believe in microevolution. I think that that's testable and observable, but I do not believe in macro. So
you seem well read on like the fossil record, and don't sort of dispute that fossils exist, and I'm just trying to get up to speed with your understanding.
Gotcha. Yeah, no problem.
So you seem like you understand, and have read a lot of papers regarding evolution. What do you mean by microevolution then? Is that
it changes within the same kind? Within the same kind. Trait isolation or encouragement.
So how far back in the tree would that go, or ostensibly the tree that I understand?
Yeah, I wasn't there, and sometimes it gets blurry, just like the definition of species does. But I would say, dogs produce dogs, cats produce cats, elephants produce elephants. You may get a hairy one, or a short one, or a big one, or a skinny one, but they're going to be of that same kind. So, dogs we can trace back to wolves. But they're still the same. They're still the same wolf kind. They didn't, I believe that birds will produce birds. I do not believe that reptiles will produce birds.
Understood. Do you think that's incongruent with there being a God? If evolution were true, would that be incongruent?
If it was true, not a God, but my God.
Yeah.
So, hold on one second, guys. Hold on one second.
Oh, I just hit my toe. Happy freaking Wednesday, everyone. Woo! All right. Peace out, everyone.
Thank you, man. Sorry, that's my troll. All right. So it wouldn't disprove a God. I think it would hinder what my God says how he did it.
I see. Okay. That's fair enough. Can I just ask, you've clearly read a lot on it, and you've seen that there's clearly a large consensus in the scientific community, and that you would have to sort of pick and choose the papers, like the one you were just referencing, I believe the Phoenix paper. So there's certainly a smaller body of evidence where there are exceptions and things that are, maybe a chink in the armor of the evolution, body of support. But do you ever wonder if it goes maybe further back than just microevolution? Having read that much?
So have I been stumped? I guess that would be, yeah. There's certain things that I wasn't able to answer for a while, and every now and again somebody will actually bring me up an example that I haven't heard and I'm unable to answer. And because I don't have an answer for it, I'll usually give a prediction, but I'll think about it and then I'll go study it and determine it. And so far, I'll give you an example. Somebody brought me up. It was a bacteria experiment that they'd done in the 70s, and it was so long ago that I hadn't read about it because it was so long ago. And I forget what the food source was that the bacteria was eating, maybe glycose maybe or something like that. But long story short, they removed the gene for the glycose for the bacteria to be able to eat glycose. So then 99.9% of the bacteria unalived because they couldn't eat the glycose anymore. So when the individual is actually a very famous YouTuber actually brought it up here. Not very famous. I probably shouldn't have said that, but a lot bigger than I am, by the name of Planet Peterson. You guys have probably seen him on. He does debates and stuff. So he come on my live one day and he brought this up. And I hadn't heard of it before. So I told him that I would have to research it. And sure enough, I did research it, but I did make a prediction. I said, I'm going to make a prediction that it's probably not genetic information gain, because the claim is that they had removed this gene for the bacteria to be able to digest glucose. And then 99% of the bacteria did unalive, but there was one bacteria that had this genetic information gain. It had a mutation that caused it to be able to start digesting lactate again, or glucose. Started to digest glucose again. And so through this population, they were able to pass on that information through their children. So I told him clearly, this was an example of genetic information gain that he was bringing, but I hadn't heard about it before, so I couldn't refute it. So I did say that I would look into it. So to answer your question very directly, yeah, I was a little bit like, oh, okay, maybe, has somebody actually brought me an actual example? So when I left the live, the first thing I did was look up the paper. And sure enough, what had happened is when they removed the gene, there is a secondary gene that the bacteria already possessed called the LTE gene or something like that. And what happened is the LTE gene already has the ability to digest lactate. Or glucose. I keep saying lactate. It already had the ability to digest lactate or glucose. Good Lord. Just not a lot of it.
Yeah.
It couldn't digest it enough for it to keep it alive. But there was a couple of bacteria through degradation, lost their arms and legs and stuff. So they didn't have to worry about taking in that much energy to stay alive along that pattern. So what happened is the ability for it to digest glucose was just enough to keep it alive and for it to replicate. Well, naturally, because you took that trait that already existed for that LTE gene for it to be able to digest glucose, you strengthened that trait that already existed, because you caused it to work out. This is microevolution,
Right.
It's trait isolation. You took a trait that already existed and you encouraged it. So the more generations they got, then the stronger that gene already got. So I took great pleasure in going into his live when he hosted the next live and showing him that the example that he gave me was nothing more than microevolution. It was not genetic information gain, that the LTE gene already pre-existed. So that was a long answer to answer your question, but I hope that I answered it.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you. I really respect that you're really well read on this, and there's no way I can go toe to toe on the actual papers. But just want to say, respect your view, and I think I understand more about the way you understand it. I guess just, do you think there is a body of evidence that goes against there being, I don't know if this is a real term, but call it macroevolution, like species,
a body of evidence that goes against it?
Well, that supports that there's microevolution but not macroevolution. Like, isn't the body of evidence fairly supportive of a somewhat continuous fossil record of things that are above wolves? That like if we can concede that wolves can become dogs and there is a evolutionary mechanism, then what's to say that the evidence sort of past that line of the thing above the wolf is, bad evidence or
Yeah, so let me respond to the first thing first there. Yeah, I appreciate the compliments. Thank you, man. And it's not about going toe-to-toe with me. It's about conversations, right? Sometimes these conversations up here do turn into contentious conversations, and it turns into a debate. I'm not afraid of a debate. We can get it on. But I'd much rather have a conversation with people, not just a debate, right? I don't mind the debates because the debate is for the individuals in the comments so they can hear both sides of their argument. But I'd much rather have a conversation instead of a debate. So with that being said, is there any, like I told the previous guest, the assumptions that the predictions, if you will, because when you have a theory, you make predictions, and if predictions come true, then you get to keep the theory. So the way evolution lines it up is well thought out. It's well thought out, and it is not out of the realm of possibility or to be able to conceive it. If macroevolution was true, then clearly you would predict that microevolution has to be true, because we don't believe that, changes happen like this right here overnight. Like you guys say a reptile doesn't give birth to a bird. Now, definitionally, you have to believe that, but I understand what you mean. You don't mean that one day a crocodile laid an egg and then a red robin popped out of it, right? Because if macroevolution is true, then microevolution would have to be true. So what we have to do is determine, okay, is there any evidence for macroevolution? Because you got two different dichotomies here. You got the creationist dichotomy that says microevolution is true and it doesn't happen from macroevolution doesn't happen. And then you got the evolutionist dichotomy, which says microevolution turns into macro. So the argument's not over micro, it's over macro. So when this is my standard. When I look at things, I need to see genetic information gain. If macroevolution is true and we have a universal common ancestor as a single-celled organism, then all evolutionists would uniformly agree that if we went from a single-celled organism to a fully functional human, the genetic information gain happened literally quadrillions of times. I just need one example of that that's testable and observable and not inferred. So I can give you examples like in human and ape generations. Thank you guys for the stickers. I appreciate the support. Apes to generations was like, or from an ape type ancestor to a human type ancestor happened within 2 million years, 80,000, 90,000 generations. That same generational count we have done in the Linsky experiment with bacteria. So why is it that long ago and far away in human evolution, we had all of this genetic information gained to go from an ape-type ancestor to a human-type ancestor in 80,000 generations? Why is it when we have tested and observed that same amount of generational count in a bacteria that's a lot simpler, so we should be able to see these mutations happening, and the mutation rates in the bacteria, if I'm not mistaken, is higher than the humans. So if that's true, we should be able to see it. And we don't. We actually see the exact opposite. We see degradation.
Interesting. So in bacteria, you're saying it does not, in spite of the mutation rate, it does not increase, it does not sort of like show a net mutation where the DNA is significantly different. Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Accurate?
So what it does, it takes existing information and it can duplicate existing information. That's not new information. That's literally just doubling old information. But like I use the Linsky experiment for as an example. If you look at, because they don't have a standard, their standard is whatever we see is evolution. So even if we see degradation, that's evolution. So the Linsky experiment, the regular wild E. coli bacteria could eat glucose and citrate. It eats glucose and oxygen when oxygen is present because of the transfer proteins change and allowing glucose. And then when the oxygen is not present, then the transfer protein changes shape and allows in citrate. So what happened is the E. coli bacteria started eating citrate in an oxygenated environment. So all of the papers and everything printed off evolution and was actually tested and observed in a lab. But then when you actually observe it and actually go to the paper, the ability for them to eat citrate was already there. There's no new information, and it actually started degrading. So it's actually worse off than in this one specific line right here. You can say that it's better, but overall, It's genetically inferior to the wild regular E. coli bacteria.
I see. Yeah. So the standard here, I believe, is in a lab, or sort of like in current times, we should be able to replicate it through some sort of faster process like DNA replication, which has faster generations. But then you still have to contend with like fossil record examples of animals landing on islands and having variation there. Or I guess you could argue that's still microevolution.
Great question. So let's do one at a time here. So because I did a couple there, I forgot about the fossil record. The reason why I don't do the fossil record is because I believe that it supports the flood. Clearly, like we can look at dinosaur bone beds, and the fact that we're finding soft tissue and DNA and fragments in dinosaurs clearly prove that they're not 65 million years old, and it proves that these layers are the same age. So when I look at the fossil record, if you're lining these things up, and again, we have to be intellectually honest. And I was talking about Planet Peterson earlier. This guy loves the fossil record. He has a great slideshow on presenting the teeth of these animals and how this one over here is a lot smaller and it started off with these teeth. And then he shows the exact same kind of teeth in this whale over here. So that means that this evolved into that. So what that is shapes and assumptions. You're literally just looking at the shapes of these things, and you're assuming because they have a lot of the same shapes, then you're assuming that they have a universal common ancestor. That's not good science, right? Just looking at something and saying they look alike, so therefore they came from each other. is not a good science to use at all. So usually when people bring up fossil records, if it's literally just shapes and assumptions, then there's no sense in even going down that avenue, because you're literally it'd be like me lining up a spoon, a spork, a salad fork and a fork. If you can, I'm going to make a slide on this so I can do it one day. But if you can just imagine those things, it would be like me saying, look, the spoon started off as a spoon, and then it slowly started getting these ridges, and here it evolved into a spork. And 65 million years later, it evolved into this salad fork. Well, it only has 3 prongs. And then 65 million years after that, it finally got to its final shape, which is the 4-pronged fork. It evolved. Well, clearly all I did was just line these things up by their shape, assume the progression, and then claim that it was evolution. And that's literally what they do with the fossil record.
But there is, I mean, if there is microevolution, like we know there's a mechanism for it, and then we see a bunch of puzzle pieces, which you could sort of expect there to be, I mean, just to use microevolution, if you saw a wolf and then a coyote and then, I don't know,
there you
chihuahua, like you might be able to sort of piece those together and say, like, well, we know there's a mechanism for change.
Within that, yes, I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you're looking at like the Gigantosaurus or Giganotosaurus, however you want to call it, or if you're looking at the T-Rex, they have small arms, big head, long tails. I believe that these are clearly in the same family with microevolution. The T-Rex, the Giganotosaurus, I think, has 3 fingers and the T-Rex has 2. I would say that they're clearly probably of the same kind. Couldn't prove that. I mean, I don't think I could, but I have no problem believing that because of their shapes. But if you tell me, look, a cow and a whale are related, I'm going to need some more evidence other than just look at these isolated bones over here that look the same when the rest of it looks totally different. I could see how these things over here are related because they do look really, really similar. But the whale and the cow don't look nothing like. And then you have to, with the whale specifically, they literally lie about vestigial structures in an effort to try to show evidence that it turned into a whale. But outside of that, that's not my point. My point is that if you're going to say that the whale eventually, or the cow eventually evolved into the whale, I'm going to need more evidence than just 2 little bones that stick out of the bottom of the whale that are actually anchor points for the whale's reproductive organs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, okay. So I think it's sort of an exercise in how far back would microevolution go. Like, you're sort of like slicing the tree. Like, if I know you don't believe in the full tree, but like if you were to just take the chart that evolutionists would have for the whole phylogenetic tree, essentially there's some sort of like horizontal cut of that tree that you're saying. You can see what's below it, like wolves and dogs. But
right,
how? I guess it's just like how far up the tree would you draw the line? Like, I don't know, raccoons to
outside
bears.
of their kind.
Pardon me?
Yeah. I would draw the line if it's outside of their kind. That's where I would draw the line. So again, for example, I use the theropod dinosaurs like Giganotosaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rex. I don't have any problem. I could be wrong on this, but I don't have any problem believing that they were the same kind of animal because of their similarities are so much alike. I don't have any problem believing that. I could be wrong, but I don't know. But I don't have any problem believing that whether I'm wrong or not. I do have a problem between the whale and the cow because they're clearly not the same kind.
How about like I don't know, a cheetah and a house cat?
A cheetah and a house cat. I would say they're probably the same kind. They're the cat canine or the feline family.
Okay, I see. So the family. Yeah, I mean, again, I respect your position. I think obviously the part that, like, it feels like if those two are alike and there's microevolution, then there is some, like, there is a process for genetic variation like that. And there is at least some amount of evolution. And I guess, I mean, obviously my belief is that that just continues on over long periods of time. And eventually you can't explain the big variations if you just continue that micro process.
Yeah, but again, like I said, the evolution is not time based; it's generational based. Now, I do know that time plays a factor, and I'm not saying that at all. But as far as it being based, it's generational based. So why is it that when we test and observe it, we don't see it? But long ago and far away, all of it happened way over there, somewhere when we can't see it. That's when it happened. But the moment we look at it, it stops. It's like the slit experiment.
Yeah, but like viruses with generations are probably a little different. I don't. This is the area where I can't like do it justice. So
I gotcha. Well, listen, man. The reason
try.
No, I got you. Fair enough. The reason why I do this again is one, because I want to strengthen the faith of the Christians. I want to show them that. What is it, somebody dropping a bomb over there?
Sorry, I think I was rustling my phone.
Yeah, I got you. So I want to strengthen the faith of the Christians. I want to show them that what the Bible says is scientifically accurate and literally true. I don't think there's any reason scientifically not to believe it. Now, clearly, the things that are classified as miracles are classified as miracles and wouldn't count in the realm of science. I'm not saying that. But
wait.
And then secondly, hold on, Airhead. I'm right in the middle of this. Don't interrupt me when I'm doing this, and then I promise you I'll let you speak. And then secondly, if you're lost, I want to try to get you saved, and I want to share Christ with you. And I've had a great conversation with you. So my next question to you before I move on is, what do you know about Christ, man?
Papi, he closed my line. She reminds me of A1 from the 9. If I see that, you know, bro.
I don't even know what that means, bro. Speak English.
I'm Christian. I guess I know fair enough.
So you're a Christian. You believe that Jesus unalive for your sins and that God the Father rose him again on the third day?
Yes, there is.
Amen. Amen. Everything else is just trivial, but amen. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's probably not trivial because I do believe the way that the Bible says it happened, but it's not a salvation issue. So that's the way I should have said that. All right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you.
I everything. I appreciate that you're like sincere and well-read and honest about it. So thank you.
I thank you, man. And give me a follow if you have any questions, man. Feel free to ask me. I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not going to say I'll have the answer, but I'll try.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you, man. You too. Good conversation. All right, Airhead, what's up, brother?
All right, I just have a random question here. Could you be wrong about your theory of evolution being false?
Yeah, absolutely. Could you be wrong about it being real?
Absolutely.
Yep. So there you go. Was that the only thing you had?
We had a conversation about Noah's Ark a while back.
Okay.
I was kind of curious on, like, you said that like all the creatures, like the kangaroos, got put on there. How did that happen?
God called them to the ark. That's what the Bible says.
Could they be wrong?
Yeah, but you're going to have to, obviously that would be classified as a miracle. Sorry. There it is. That part would clearly be classified as a miracle. So, I mean, if could it be wrong? I mean, you could claim that, but I don't see any reason not to believe it. Especially
Could
when
the Bible be
I
wrong?
look at the other evidence that claims. Well, like I said, when we say could anything be wrong, could we be in assimilation? Yeah. So I don't think anybody should really go with absolute truths on really anything, except unless they're going with a religious viewpoint. But outside of this, I'm trying to show you guys from a scientific viewpoint for the most part. So if you're asking me from my religious viewpoint, do I believe that these things could be wrong? Clearly not. I think the Word of God is unfaltered. Now, if I'm looking at it from
Have a good day.
All right, have a good day. I'll land this plane because I think that's really all he wanted to say right here. Is try to get that point in, try to act like I wasn't objective. But if I'm being objective and trying to remove the religion out of it, because I think God is strong enough for me to look at things objectively and then make an educated decision to go with him. Now, after that, on the things that I don't understand, then clearly I can use faith and say, I don't understand this, I'm just going to go with God on it. on some of the things. But I do not think my faith is literally classified in the Bible. It's defined, faith is defined as the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Things that are not seen still has evidence. And we should have evidence. And God tells us that we should be ready to give the reason for our hope. And the reason I have hope and the reason that I love Christianity is because of the science that goes with it. That's my passion. A lot of people like it because of this or that, and I go with the science. That's what I love about the Bible, is that I can have these conversations with educated people about the science and show them that the Bible is true. God wrote the laws of physics, so they obey him. So when I look at science, it confirms the scripture. I don't have to use assumptions. I use science. Ant, you've been waiting patiently, brother. What you got, man?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. This is my first time on TikTok Live, so I apologize if I do anything wrong. I'm a Christian, but I just wanted to know your opinion on so like our species of like human, like have been around for like they say like around 300,000 years, something like that.
Yeah, I know they say that. Yeah.
But like civilization, like as we know it, essentially, not like creating tools, but like living in towns and whatnot, and like advancing like technology. Excuse me, has only been like seen from like archaeologically, like around 10,000 years. What do you think the reason in that gap?
Yeah. Okay. So let me do. I'll do kind of like one at a time there, because we do a couple different things out there. So, as far as like the DNA and stuff, when they say that humanity is older than that, we actually have what we call mitochondrial Eve, which is using mtDNA, which is mitochondrial DNA. And every human alive today can trace their mtDNA, their mitochondrial DNA. So you got two different types of DNA. You got mtDNA, and then you got nuclear DNA. So the mtDNA is like direct lineage, right? You get it passed on from your mother, and it goes from woman to woman to woman to woman to woman. So everybody alive today can trace their mtDNA to what they call a mitochondrial Eve. And in those calculations, we got two different types of calculations. You got substitution, and then you got pedigree. So the substitution calculations is they look at the mutation rate, and they look at things within the mtDNA, and then they say this is fixed, and we assume that it took 10,000 years for this mutation to become fixed, and it's not a mutation now, but it used to be a mutation, and it took 10,000 years to become fixed. So then they just add 10,000 years onto the count, and that's what they do with these fixed things, and it's called substitution calculations. This is inferred, right? And that's what those calculations get you back to 150 to 200,000 years old for mitochondrial Eve. The actual pedigree calculations are actual tested and observed calculation rates, meaning that we've done these on literally tens of thousands of people to determine what the mutation rate is between generations. That's testable and observable. So that pedigree calculations actually get you back anywhere between 12,000 and 6,000 years, which is exactly what the Bible says. So when we talk about DNA saying that the human race is actually older than that, not really. The actual testable and observable calculation rates get you back to 12,000 to 6,000 years, young Earth, which is what the creation model would say. And we're using testable and observable calculations, not substitution. Now, as far as the geologic column, where you're talking about they're looking at an archaeological site and saying that it's older, I would have to know what dating technique they're using. If they're using the geologic column, then they're going off of a man called what's his name? I like to look it up. I know what it is, but it's called uniformitarianism. Charles Lyell come up with this thing called uniform. He's not the father of it, but he's the one that made it popular, called the uniformitarianism, meaning that when people looked at the geologic column before Charles Lyell, they thought of catastrophe. In other words, people said, wow, all of these layers were formed in Noah's flood. Wow, that's amazing. It's a catastrophe that caused all this flood caused all this hydrologic sorting. And Charles Lyell is literally quoted as saying that he wanted to remove Moses, meaning the book of Genesis, talking about the flood. He wanted to remove that from geology. So he come up with uniformitarianism, meaning that we see slow sediment rates in rivers today. So he calculated that it took 3 years for 2 inches of sediment to happen. So therefore, because we got these sediment rates that are miles and miles and miles, that means that it had to happen over millions and millions and millions of years. But that's just not true, because again, we see that this can happen rapidly during a flood. The flood was worldwide. I can predict that these columns, these layers, hydrologic sorting, happens all over the planet. I can predict that if you're on dry ground and not bedrock, that you're going to see this column. You're going to find it there. And then we got polystratofossils that connect many of these different layers, unequivocally proving that they clearly could not have been laid down millions of years apart from each other if you have a fossilized tree that connects them all.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess
yeah, man.
The point of like my question, sorry if I wasn't like specific with it, is
okay,
not like religiously, like, because obviously God gave us the answer for the why, but I guess from a scientific point of view, why do you think there, from what they provide, is like stopping humans from evolving quicker? Because you could see like for us, like in recent like years, within like the past like 1,000, 2,000 years, we've advanced like crazy quick, right? Why would the beginning be like so far from their point of view? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you. So the reason why we're so far advanced is because we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Somebody already invented the wheel, and then we stand on his shoulders to get us to the next part. These individuals that are writing like AI, they didn't have to invent the computer was already invented. They didn't have to invent the internet, they didn't already invent. So my point is that they stood on the shoulders of the next person and to get to the next step. Now imagine if it's a theory and not actual physical things we can advance on, but if it's a theory, imagine if the theory's foundation was completely flawed and you're trying to build off of that theory, then everything after that is going to have a flaw in it. And that's exactly what we see with evolution. I don't think that there's a conspiracy theorist amongst evolutionists. I think that there's real scientists that actually look at the evidence and they go, okay, I'm coming to the conclusion that this is millions or billions of years old. I don't think that they're Satanists or they have this conspiracy theory. I think their foundation is flawed because I'm using the same science that they are. Now, sometimes I clearly do believe that they put blinders on purpose, like Mary Schweitzer, for example, in Dinosaurs. I see Jason down there having a conversation saying dinosaurs are not millions of years old. Here's a prime example. They're finding soft tissue in dinosaur bones. We know what the degradation rates of collagen is. They're finding DNA fragments. We know what the degradation rates of DNA is. These things cannot last 65 million years. So they're saying that they're still 65 million years old in spite of the evidence. So in those specific cases, I clearly think that they're closing their eyes to the science because they don't want to believe what it says. But not all scientists are doing that. Some people truly believe in evolution because of the science that they look at. Like I mentioned earlier about the endogenous retroviruses. If you don't know the young Earth creationist side, then endogenous retroviruses can seem like a very strong evolutionary evidence. Because if you're uneducated in it and you say, look, these are viruses and they're in the genome of humans and apes in the exact same way, in the exact same location, and for this to happen would be mathematically impossible. So therefore it proves universal common ancestor. So the first time I heard the argument of endogenous retroviruses, I was like, ooh, this is some good science. I talked to honest to goodness biologists on my stage in here that says, look, I believe in Jesus, I believe in God, I believe in a young Earth, but the endogenous retroviruses, it's hard to get around. It's hard to get around. So I studied it. Not in an effort to get around it, but to see how we were looking at these things. I listened to Standing for Truth has some of the best debates on endogenous retroviruses because I don't mind reading the papers, but I want to see an argument from both sides. I want to see how these things go under scrutiny. And I think that's why I do what I do, so people can get their side out, and then I can get my side out, and the people in the comments can see, they can gather their own information to see who's true. So I watched those debates on endogenous retroviruses. I've seen the predictions that the young Earth creationists make. I went to the papers as far as the Phoenix paper, and I see that, yeah, this fits the young Earth creation side, so I have no reason to not believe. To answer your question?
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, to me, it's seems like a hard assumption, I guess, that they would be making, because for me, I feel like we would develop a lot quicker than the estimates that they're giving. I know people say it's survivability. The environment was harsh, XYZ, the ice age, whatever. But it seems like we just develop way quicker than that gap is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we also go the exact opposite way too, though. So cancer is mutations, and that is skyrocketed in the human population. And a lot of that is from degradation. So our body fights against mutations. And the fact that it's degrading and cancer is exploding across everywhere. And now we have to, and I love God. I think God is allowing scientists, they're allowing doctors, we have to fight this in a way now that's outside the body. Before, our bodies would replicate these or fight these viruses or fight these mutations. Your body literally tries to stop evolution from happening. If there is a matter of fact, it's actually part of one of the endogenous retroviruses strain is to fight mutations. It checks out, and if it finds that there's a mutation, it unalives it, right? So they're actually trying to figure out how to use that, encourage it, and fight cancer because it fights mutations. So with that being said, the fact that cancer is skyrocketing shows that the human genetic information is actually degrading. It's not getting better over time. We're living longer by today's standards or the 1940 standards, but that's because of our technology has granted that. Our eating habits have granted that. Our eating habits and technology really is the only things that's really granted that. But it's not because that our genetic information is getting so much stronger. We see now that men are losing their testosterone more and more after generation to generation to generation to generation. Our grandfathers were tough as nails and fought World War II. And then you see the men generation today, you still have a couple of bad A's around like myself, but for the most part, you see men are getting softer, and that is a direct link to men's testosterone degrading. They have to take testosterone supplements in an effort to get the testosterone level that their grandfather had. Some of that comes with diet, some of that comes with work, but it's still showing that it's degrading. It's clearly getting worse. It's not getting better. And if all of the men evolve good enough to where they lose their testosterone, then our species goes extinct because they're not going to want to replicate.
Yeah, I didn't know that about cancer, because it seems contrary to what evolution would strive for, because supposed to be survive, reproduce, doesn't really have a spot for cancer. You know what I mean? Unless it would just be a mutation, something that just got thrown in, and that's what we're running with now.
Yeah, and mutations are real, but they're not the hero of the plot. They're the problem. If you have so many different mutations that pile up, it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna compound on the problem. So you can't just be having all of these random mutations everywhere and then expect something great's gonna come out of it. You're gonna be left over with a lot of problems. You're probably going to have, matter of fact, what we have seen is mutations that cause degradation, like cancer. I can give you example after example after example of a mutation that causes degradation, but I've yet to be given one example of a mutation that causes information gain.
Yeah, I think the process that they say for evolution, at a point it makes sense, but as you were saying, um, the degradation part, like for us to continue like existing, just doesn't seem like it would be like a plausible thing that would have happened. You know what I mean? 'Cause otherwise, we would have died off.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, man. Like you said, you was already a Christian, brother. So give me a follow, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer them for you.
I appreciate your time, brother. Take care. God bless.
Yeah, man. You too. Yeah, God bless, brother. God bless. Hiking, I believe you were in here next. What you got, brother?
Well, I'm just listening to a couple things that you're talking about with genetics and
Mm-hmm.
with dating rocks, and you're not correct on the mitochondrial DNA, sir.
Oh, what did I get wrong on it?
Well, you got a lot of things wrong.
Okay, what did I get wrong? What did I get wrong? You went off the app. I can't hear you when you go off the app.
The mtDNA has been traced back 240 to 340,000 years. Okay, that's just the immediate DNA. We know from geneticists that we can track humans, and we are apes, literally. That's the classification that humans belong in. We're apes. We can trace the DNA, 98.6% of it back to we have the same DNA as a chimpanzee.
All right, so that's nuclear, and I understand that they're going to say that I'm not. So let me make my claim clear, because you said I was wrong on it, and then you went to say something that I never claimed. So you're claiming that I didn't say mtDNA in itself. Period. There's other organisms that have mtDNA. Matter of fact, apes have their, or excuse me, like bonobos or chimps, and all of these have their own mtDNA strand. So I didn't say that mtDNA on its own. I said humans can trace their mitochondrial DNA to a human. This is true. Bonobos can trace their mitochondrial DNA. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So our mtDNA, as far as it being lineage, goes back to a mitochondrial Eve, which is a human. The bonobos have one that goes back to bonobos. Most animals have a mitochondrial Eve that goes back to their original kind.
Correct.
You can say so. Okay, so you can make the claim that mitochondrial DNA is older, but you cannot make the claim that we can trace it back to there.
But
our lineage doesn't show that.
Okay,
you can say that our similarities does, but not the lineage. The lineage goes back to a mitochondrial Eve, which is a human.
Okay, but here's the thing. We can trace that mitochondrial DNA back certain tens of thousands of years.
Not through lineage, though. Not through lineage. We got to be intellectually honest with what it said. No, we can't, brother. This is y'all do this all the time.
Okay.
Evolutionists come up here, claim that I'm wrong about mtDNA, and then you're I'm not.
I'm going to ask you just a serious question. I mean, no disrespect.
Okay.
What's your education in genetics?
I don't have an education in genetics, but I am able to Google and read.
I got two geneticists from Caltech and Johns Hopkins University that are laughing right now, telling me that
I don't care. I don't care who you got.
You know more about
I know that I'm
than those guys,
brother. Give me one paper, one scientifically peer-reviewed paper that shows that our
Johns Hopkins University.
Stop talking. I ain't got it out. Stop talking. I ain't got it out. You can't answer the question unless I get it out, because y'all do this all the time. I'm not talking about similarities. I'm not talking about nuclear DNA. I'm talking about mitochondrial DNA. Our lineage goes back to a mitochondrial Eve. If you said that it went back older than that, she wouldn't be the Eve. The mitochondrial Eve would be if our mitochondrial DNA went to bonobos, for example, then our mitochondrial Eve would be a bonobo. Every scientific paper on mitochondrial Eve says that she's a human that lived in Africa, not an ape. And for you guys to come up here constantly and tell me I'm wrong on this when I can give you paper after paper after paper that shows you that our mitochondrial Eve goes back to a human. Now, if you're saying that it goes back later than that or earlier than that, then give me the paper that shows that our mitochondrial Eve is actually an ape and not a human. You have to unmute yourself.
We've had several different species of Homo sapiens. Going back to Peking man, Neanderthal, we've had different types of Homo sapiens that went extinct during things like ice ages.
That's a great statement. Can you answer my question?
I'm waiting.
I ask it. Can you answer it?
We can. We've traced the DNA strands
then
back.
answer it.
And
Give me the
that we're
paper.
not-
What's the name of the paper
hold
that
on.
shows that mitochondrial Eve was an ape? No, I'm not
Okay,
holding
take it
on.
easy.
You make claims now. You're going to support those claims.
Okay.
Show me the
sir,
paper, and
you got
we'll
about,
move on.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you if you'll stop
Okay.
interrupting. Okay.
Okay.
You got about 10 from Johns Hopkins University. Okay. Going from 2021 to 2020. You can check that out.
What's the name of the paper?
There's, sir, you can do your own homework. Okay. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, get off
sit
my
here-
stage. Get off. Yeah, you're not going
Oh,
to sit here and give
sure.
the evidence. Get off my stage. Get off my stage. I can give you the paper. I can actually go right now to a source that says mitochondrial Eve was a human. Got no problem with that. You're just going to say, go do your own research. I have. That's why I'm saying that mitochondrial Eve goes back to a human. Would you like me to? Here, I'll just do a real quick thing. I'll show you. Let's see. All right, get me a peer-reviewed paper about mitochondrial Eve. All right, see, the most famous peer-reviewed paper about mitochondrial Eve is Mitochondrial DNA in Human Evolution in Nature, 1987. Literally just type this in. I can't flip my camera around anymore because TikTok bans me when I do that. But mitochondrial DNA, this is the name of the paper. I literally just typed in right here in Google, give me a peer-reviewed paper about mitochondrial Eve. Generic, just ask it about that. Most famous paper is called Mitochondrial DNA in Human Evolution in Nature, 1987. So let's go to it and see if it says that mitochondrial Eve goes back to a human or not. Mitochondrial is 147 people drawn from 5 genetic populations have been analyzed and restricted maps. All these mitochondrial DNA stem from one woman who postulated to have lived to about 200,000 years ago. This is the substitution calculations. Sir, you have failed on your face. And tell the geneticists that are laughing at me, they probably should stop laughing. Or if they have the cojones to come up on stage and have a conversation with me directly and stop hiding behind somebody who's clearly wrong, because they're clearly lying to you. Because right here, right off of the abstract, mitochondrial DNA from 147 people drawn from 5 genetic populations have been analyzed by restriction mapping. All these mitochondrial DNA stem from one woman, not ape. Not ape. I did it just like this. I did it just like that. The first thing I looked up for, I was able to support my claim. Just like that. So easy. All right. K.A. Carbon, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? I was wondering if you had an argument that we were designed by God.
An argument for design?
Yeah, well, designed by God, not just designed.
Well, if there is an argument for design, it would have to be a deity, and that would be a god, right?
What's the argument for that?
The dichotomy. So it's either there's only been 2 options ever given for anything, like for the universe, right? So either things come into existence through evolution, which would encapsulate 2 theories: either matter is eternal, or it came into existence during the Big Bang. Both of those are considered the theory of evolution. Okay, so that would fit in one. The other one is a deity, which would be a god. So because you have that dichotomy, if something is designed, then it would have to be from a deity.
Okay, so I think there's some confusion on your part here. When I talk about evolution, like I said, humans being designed, I wasn't talking about the universe. That was the question I asked.
I still don't think you understood the answer. You say I'm confused. I'm not.
Yeah,
Any design,
here, I'll
a
show you why
design
that's
has to imply. You're not listening. A design implies a designer, right? You can't have a design through evolution because it's not forward thinking. It doesn't design things. A design is a designer, right? So by default, that would be a creator or a deity, right?
No, what does that follow? Are you a deity if you design like a computer program?
Yes.
You are a deity if you design a computer
I am a
program.
design. You're not listening. I am a
I asked you if
designer.
you were a deity.
It's not.
Answer the question.
I know, man. You're okay.
gonna run.
Get off my stage. I don't know. Y'all. Yeah, I'm going to run. I'm going to clearly run. You're not ready for this conversation. No disrespect, but if I can't get you to show you that a designer or a design requires a designer, and you don't understand that, I can't help you. You're not ready. So no disrespect, but I'm just not wasting my time with that. Jasper, what's up, man?
Hey, brother. How you doing? Sounds like it's
Hanging
been
in there,
heated.
brother. I mean, I've had some great conversations. It's only the last 2 that kind of got silly on me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like that last one is he wasn't understand. That was sound almost more like a linguistic confusion than anything else to me, where he just didn't understand, like, to be designed, there is an inherent need for a thing to be a designer.
Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping I wasn't the only one that got that.
No, like I said, I think that seems more like a linguistic thing. I mean, obviously, I would then say the presupposition for the universe would be that there is a designer. I wouldn't say the universe is designed, right? But I think we would disagree on that, and that's all right. Right. I had just heard you talking about mitochondrial Eve a little bit, and I had looked into that a smidge. Okay. From my understanding, mitochondrial Eve, I would agree, would be a human.
Thank you.
Seems would be like our earliest common ancestor, I guess, would be the easiest way for me to put that. So my understanding is everyone on the planet can trace their lineage, like you've been saying, back to her specifically.
Yes.
Right. But she would just be the earliest example of where we could all trace our lineage back to. So I would make the argument that she had parents. I guess do you believe that mitochondrial Eve is the biblical Eve?
Don't know. It wouldn't matter to me if it was or not. But you are absolutely correct, and I really appreciate you following that. You're absolutely correct. So, did mitochondrial Eve have parents? Maybe, but can we prove that? That's what I'm saying. So the theory says that mitochondrial Eve came from an ape. I understand the theory, but we go to mitochondrial Eve. We don't go to an ape. So can we then postulate, did mitochondrial Eve have parents? Possibly. I don't know if it was Eve or not. It wouldn't matter to me if she wasn't or not. It could be that the DNA is degraded and it's just that she's the last one we can actually trace from. Or it could be that her lineage is the only lineage that survived, which it's really hard to believe that her lineage was the only lineage that's able to survive, especially if you're saying that she had parents, then you're imagining that she had was part of a population. Then I would have to imagine that population had to be spread out. So why is her lineage the only lineage that survived? So I do think it fits the Bible better. I don't know if she was the actual Eve or not. But again, the argument goes back to she's an actual human. Hello.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess that was my confusion there, and that might have just come from I basically just jumped in and I think I caught sort of the middle to the end of that conversation. So yeah, and then if you don't know that she's obviously biblical Eve, would you say then we would be able to theoretically trace her, if she's not biblical Eve, her mitochondrial DNA would be able to go back to biblical Eve?
If it was possible, yeah, I would have to believe that because Eve was the first.
Eve, yeah. No, I would agree. Right. I would agree. So I don't. What was the age of biblical, or not biblical? Mitochondrial Eve.
The age of mitochondrial Eve? Because I assume
we have a number.
Well, you got like if you're talking about like mitochondria.
When?
Yeah, you got two different aging techniques. One of them, I already mentioned this earlier. I don't know if you heard or not. Substitution calculations and pedigree calculations. Substitution calculations are inferred, and they go back to about 200,000 years ago. And then pedigree calculations are the one that's actually testable and observable calculation rates of the mutations, and it goes back to 12,000 to 6,000 years.
Gotcha. I guess I'm not familiar with either of those. So, substitution and what was the other one?
Pedigree.
Substitution and pedigree. Because I would like to look those up. So, what substitution? I've heard you talk about like tree ring stuff. Is that what substitution is?
No. Substitution calculation. So what they do is they look at the mutation rate within the mitochondrial DNA. Every generation has like 100 mutations or something like that. So that's what the mutation rate is. So they look at they get this rate by testing and observing generations and generations and generations. You can look at the studies that's done the pedigree, and it's literally like tens of thousands of people that they've actually done this sample size on to get the pedigree calculation rates. Substitution calculates looks at a known fixed sequence inside the mtDNA, not mutated, but something that's fixed. And then what they then infer that this fixed item within the mtDNA used to be a mutation, and it's been there so long that it became part of the genome. Not just mutation, that it's actually fixed within the genome. And then they calculate how long would it take for this, if it started off as a mutation and now it's fixed within the genome, how long would it take in evolutionary time for that to happen? So then they calculate, I'm just throwing a number out there just to make the math simple. It takes 10,000 years for this thing that we see for it to become fixed. We see 10 of these things, so automatically by default that means it's 10,000 years old, because it took 10,000 years for this one to happen, 10,000 years for that to happen, and 10 times 10 will be 100,000, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the pedigree calculations are the ones that's actually testable and observable. You don't have to infer, you don't have to guess and say, okay, well, we think this used to be a mutation and now it's fixed. Now we say, okay, this is what the rate is. And if we go back to what mitochondrial Eve has, that would be 12,000 to 6,000 years ago.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, man.
Like I said, I hadn't heard of either of those, so I'll kind of look into that. That sounds very cool. I did look into the soft tissue dinobone thing a little bit. It's been slammed at work, so I haven't had as much time as I would have liked. But that's some interesting stuff. It sounds like there's some information and some research being done into it was some sort of like iron bonding that sounds like it can preserve things in certain conditions, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I know what you're talking about
it at this time to.
Yeah, no problem. I can give you the reference paper. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's Mary Schweitzer who does it. It's iron. I can give you the study right now, actually. Dinosaur DNA. Let's go there. The name of the study is actually called, wait, that's not it. Dinosaur soft tissue. That's the one I should have picked. The name of the study is actually called A Role Iron and Oxygen Chemistry Play in Preserving Soft Tissue and Molecules from Deep Time. This was done in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, or 2005, if I'm not mistaken. But I would encourage you when you read that, because that's exactly where this paper is coming from. If anybody Googles this, the first thing they're going to get is iron cross-linking. And then when you ask it for a source, the source is going to take you to this paper. If you read the very first words of the abstract, this is what the abstract says. This is what the scientists say. The persistence of original soft tissue in Mesozoic fossil bone is not explained by current chemical degradation models. They actually did a substitution study. They did another study on top of this one in 2019. And that paper says, in the decision, data supporting endogeny, meaning that it's original to the dinosaur, data supporting endogeny has been viewed with skepticism in part because no mechanism has been identified that could reasonably contribute to such preservation. So it is true that the scientists or Google at least, is telling you that the preservation methods is iron cross-linking. Unfortunately for them is that when you go to the papers say we don't have the degradation models to get us out to 65 million years.
Gotcha. Does it give any other age outside of that it like would be possible without iron cross-linking or whatever someone thinks, or is just say not really 65 million years and we don't know outside of that?
No, well, they don't say that. They claim that clearly 65 million years old. They're going to make that claim, but they don't give any degradation models. And they don't make the claim that this gets it to 65 million years. So let me be very specific with what they're saying. They still believe in 65 million years, but they're not claiming that this is the method to get it to 65 million years. They're being honest and say, we don't know how this lasts for 65 million years, but this experiment may play a role in it. That's why the paper is literally called A Role That Iron and Oxygen Play, because it's not the mechanism that gets to 65 million years. So what she did is she put ostrich-rich iron blood on like raw meat, basically, and it did preserve it for longer, but they did not do a degradation rate study. I think they did clearly do it, but the reason why they don't put the degradation rate out there because you have to know that you have to know the degradation rate to claim that this is not the mechanism to get it to 65 million years. But they don't give a rate. None of the papers gives a degradation rate. It only just says that we don't understand what the mechanism is. That's what it says.
Gotcha. I think I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, that's I think I'm going to be honest. I think this is one spot where kind of foundationally, I would say is one of the biggest differences between, a faith in the Bible approach to what we see around us and a scientific approach, honestly, would be that, I think, and I guess this is true for some people. It might not be true for you, but, from the other interactions I've had, a lot of people say, the Bible is infallible, that it can't change. You can't, right. The Bible's the Bible. God is God. You can't really mess with that because that's,
are they not doing that? Are they not doing that with the science that I literally just showed you? Like we know what the degradation rates of collagen is. We know what the degradation rates of DNA is. And the fact that they're finding these in dinosaurs and still claiming in the paper that they're 65 million years when the science in the paper says they're not, how is that not them doing that? How is that not saying we're going to go with it being 65 million years regardless of what the science says?
Sure. So my argument for that would be we have found, like, I assume they dated that dinosaur. Well, I assume, I don't know. I would assume they dated that dinosaur bone using a separate method, or they can also look at bones of the same species of animal, the same species of dinosaur or bones in the surrounding area and use that to then date, that area where that bone was found. Right. Whatever. Using, I know your feelings on radio dating, so we don't even need to go into that. Right.
Well, actually, when it comes to this one, I actually like radio dating because it really hurts their thing. So the dating that they're using for the dinosaurs is called the geologic column. They actually don't use radiometric dating to date the dinosaurs.
Oh, okay.
They use the geologic column. Now, they may use it on certain other things, but for the most part, the radiometric dates for the dinosaurs came from the geologic column, and they use index fossils. So, and those dates were literally just guessed upon in science. That, like, the geologic column came about with those dates before there were ever radiometric dating techniques. So they usually get those dates from the geologic column, which is really just guesstimate. They don't have any solid scientific method to say that this is what it is old. They literally just were assigned those dates. But if you want to use radiometric dating, then I love it on this because they're finding carbon-14 in dinosaur bones and in the very same soft tissue that they're studying. So if I would concede that radiometric dating is great and I don't have any problems with it, then the carbon-14 that they're finding in dinosaur bones proves that it's less than 50,000 years old.
Interesting. Yeah, like I said, I have to do deeper research into the bones. I only get a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess my argument, right, my debate point for that would be, one of the things that science does that I don't see as often in the Bible or in proponents of the Bible is science changes its mind, right? We can get new evidence and then adjust what we say is true, essentially, right? At one point, we thought dinosaur skeletons were put on with their tails at their necks and stuff, right? And that was, quote unquote, this is how dinosaurs are.
They change their mind as long as it fits. You know me, man. I'm not slinging rocks at you.
No, I got you.
Everything I just showed you shows you they're not changing their mind. So they're changed their mind within their model as long as it proves millions or billions of years ago. Sure, the dinosaurs used to believe dinosaurs drugged their tails. They realized they didn't, so they actually fixed that model. They're not fixing the model that shows that they're not 65 million years. They're going against the evidence.
Sure. So I see what you're saying. And what I would say is within the context of the rest of the evidence, right? Obviously, we think, we brought it up, potassium argon dating, right? We think that is a valid way of dating things. We have carbon-14. We have, I know you've talked about the tree rings and tracking older and older trees and matching up tree rings, right? Like those are things that science believes, if you want to put it that way.
Sure.
Like, we would say that it's proven, right?
How about
the
like
preponderance of other evidence, right? It's kind of Occam's razor. If you have all of this evidence to say this bone would have to come from 65 million years because of 10 things, and then you find one thing or two things that say we don't know how old it is, but it's less than 65 million years. Occam's razor would have to take that outlier out.
Okay, that's great. Let's go with Occam's razor. So Occam's razor, you go with the one that makes the least amount of assumptions. I love Occam's razor because that's what it is. So you got the geologic. Let's take the Lazarus experiment for example. You have a layer that's dated at 250 million years old, predates the dinosaurs, right? 250 million years old. They pull out salt crystals that encased with the prebiotic soup, if you will. They took that out. They used all of these different methods to make sure to sterilize it, that there was no outside bacteria that could come in and contaminate it. They took the ocean, if you will, that was trapped within the little bubbles of this salt crystal, put it in a petri dish, and revived bacteria that was over 250 million years old. This means that the DNA survived. So we know what the degradation rates are of DNA. This strand of bacteria is almost identical to the same strands that's around now, showing that the bacteria did not evolve. They're the same they was 250 million years ago that they are now. So Occam's razor would suggest that which one do we assume? Do we go with the radiometric dating that gives us 250 million years old when you have to assume how much what the parent material was in it, when you have to assume the decay rate remains constant, and when you have to assume that it's in a closed environment because no leaching can happen, meaning that radiometric material can be washed in or out? We know that they have to make these three assumptions on every radiometric dating technique. Or do we go with the testable, observable science that says, here is the DNA decay rate. It cannot last 65 million years or millions of years beyond that. But yet we're finding DNA and bacteria that's 250 million years old. Occam's razor clearly goes with me, brother. I don't have to make any assumptions because everything that I just did was testable and observable.
Sure, I think we would argue that the other things are also testable and observable, right? We can actually observe the decay rates of like potassium, argon, and stuff, and so we have. As far as I'm on actually.
How long? How long have we been observing it?
This is again where I think we would disagree with the constancy of essentially what we call a universal fundamental force, right? Like
it's a nuclear force, so I will grant that it's probably constant. It's the one out of the three assumptions that I'm willing to grant. But we have to be intellectually honest. We've only been observing it remain constant for 100 years. Everything past radiometric 14 goes into the billions of years, not like radio 14 goes into the 50,000s. But you want me to believe that we've been observing it remain constant for 100, so therefore we can extrapolate that it remains constant for 1 billion? I think that's a huge extrapolation. Hey, Jason, watch the live for me just for a second. I got to go step over here and help my wife out for a second. Feel free to talk amongst each other for a second.
So you notice how the host lied earlier, right?
In what way? I'm curious. What do you think?
He said that I asked him that if something was designed, does it have a designer? But that's not the question that I asked him.
I might have missed that part of the conversation. I was making my ravioli.
Yeah. So the question that I asked him was, if something is designed, what's the argument that it was designed by God? And he couldn't answer that question, right? And then so he changed the question to, well, designs have to have designers. I agree with that, right? Somebody who designs a computer program is a designer, but they're not a God, right? So I just wanted him to give an argument for, humans being designed by God. Right, and he couldn't give that argument anyway. So he lied about what the question I asked was.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I missed that specific part. The only part that I came in on made it seem like it was more of a linguistic, technical thing, right? I think it was more on the misunderstanding side. I think your question was, I can't even read.
So when I first came up, I asked him.
Now, I had my earpiece in, and you claimed that I lied. No disrespect to you, brother, but I just don't think that. Yeah, I didn't lie. What you can do is you can come
Did I
back and
ask
watch your
you
clip
if
back.
do designers have design?
Yeah.
Do designers
Yeah, get
have
off my
designers?
stage. Again, no disrespect, but a designer would imply a creator. If you cannot understand that, brother, I can't help you. I gave you the dichotomy. Either the world came into existence through evolution or it came into existence through a deity, which would be a god. So a design needs a designer. The designer would be God. I didn't lie. You're just not intelligent enough for this conversation.
Host, can I say something?
Absolutely, brother.
Yes, when you ask for evidence of a designer creating something, I would say the things that are in nature, right, that can be duplicated. Like, for example, something small like a tree seed that produce apples, things like that. The only way you could able to do anything is you have to clone the genome from it, and you could mix it, but you won't be able to create a new seed using your own codes. You will have to copy what's already in nature, which means that these seeds are a miracle within itself. The question is, who made it?
Yeah. You see, look, he's still in the comments. I design a video game, but I'm not God. Yeah. Again, brother, I'm not trying to sound mean, but man, you cannot follow. Everybody else can get this, but you in this conversation. People that come up here that diametrically oppose me can understand the analogy that I'm making. There is a creator, right? In the dichotomy, not video game dichotomy, in the dichotomy, I got that. In the dichotomy of creation versus evolution, the creator is the designer. I'm not talking about a video game, I'm talking about matter, right? Physical matter. So again, you're not able to follow the analogy. So anyway, I'm getting ready to bounce off of here, guys. I got a long day ahead of me tomorrow. I probably will not be on tomorrow. That's why I jumped on now. Jasper, do you have anything else before I rolled out?
No, man, I'm really appreciate you talking with me as always. It's always a good time. It's good seeing you. So,
yeah, man. Yeah, God bless, brother. God bless.
Yep. As well.
Pushback. I know you come up and you've been ComCon compliant. You got anything you want to add to before I roll out? I know he usually just comes up and watches me. All right. Well, as always, Back, appreciate the support. Appreciate you coming in and adding that. I think that is an outstanding point that you made, how the seed can replicate itself. You know, you only plant one kernel of corn, but that one kernel of corn can grow a corn plant that can replicate itself hundreds of times just from one kernel. I think that's actually outstanding evidence for God. I don't think evolution can explain that at all. As always, Mr. Allen, you get the last word.
Hey, how'd that go this evening?
Man, I had some good conversations today. I really did. Just a couple of people that really couldn't follow, but for the most part, really good conversations.
Yeah, my surgery and stuff went good today.
Amen. To God be all the glory.
Yeah. So, as always, God bless and keep going strong.
All right. Thank you, guys.